Okay, welcome back to Rev University. I'm so glad you're here, and we have a very special guest with us today. Brock Blake is an ambitious and strategic entrepreneur and leader. He is passionate about solving major market problems, and as a leader, he focuses on recruiting high-quality talent, articulating the company's vision, creating an attractive culture, and focusing on execution. Now, with Lendio listed as one of the fastest-growing companies locally and nationally, Brock is recognizably one of Utah's top entrepreneurs and leaders. To tell the battles that ended in both victory and defeat, and the war stories that led to an $80 million win, please welcome Lendio co-founder and CEO, Brock Blake.
I want a footrest.
Well, you could grab one. There is another one over there.
Just kidding. So happy to be here. What an amazing program. I didn't know that. No, I was just
Asking
kidding.
ye shall
Look at this guy, the
receive,
ultimate
yes.
servant leader right there. I didn't know that much about RevRoad, and I'm just so impressed. This is awesome. Feel very fortunate to be here. So thanks for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you. Help us get to know you better. Talk to us about your life. What started you on the entrepreneurial journey, your first businesses. Give us the rundown.
Wow, we could take the whole time just answering in that question, but grew up in Ogden. I'm the youngest of six, and 5 boys. And so, being the youngest of 6, there's this scrappy, competitive mentality because I had to fight for everything my entire life. We spent a lot of time in the backyard playing football or basketball or whatever, and I was always the one kind of getting beat up, trying to prove my worth as the youngest kid. So it's a big part of who I am. Went to BYU, played soccer there. Always actually thought I was going to be a doctor until I saw a horrific accident. I was the first one on a scene when I was down in Uruguay, and they didn't have modern medicine. And I could not get that scene out of my mind for like a month. And so quickly changed my path, and thankfully I did. And then at BYU, I won an entrepreneurial competition and won $50,000 to go and start a business. And I could start any business that I wanted. And I used that kind of to launch my entrepreneurial career. And it's been amazing journey of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
So you won $50,000, and was that $50,000? Was Lendio kind of that first business that you ventured into, or was the $50,000 put towards something different at first? Where did that go?
No, so by the way, I have to. I failed to mention 4 kids, married, and really amazing part of my life, and is my favorite is being a husband and father of my 4 kids. So part of my intro that I did that I'm like, well, that's a big part of who I am, and I didn't mention anything. So so my first business that I started, so I got that $50,000, and I was going around trying to figure out what was I gonna do? Was I gonna buy a business or start a business? And so I started interviewing a bunch of other entrepreneurs and small business owners, and I almost bought into before it was. Have you? There's an ice cream that uses liquid nitrogen. What's it called?
Sub-Zero.
Sub-Zero. I almost bought into Sub-Zero and was going to run that business. And I almost got into a couple other businesses, but as I was talking to all these business owners, every single one of them had this same common problem, which was they needed capital to grow their business. And so my co-founder is a guy named Trent Miskin. They had come up with this concept of connecting entrepreneurs to private investors. And it was kind of like speed dating. We do these events, but you speed pitching. You go table to table to table, pitching entrepreneurs, and you could post your business plan on a website, and we'd have all these investors come and review it, and all of that kind of stuff. And so that was the first business that we started. It's called Funding Utah, and then we changed it to Funding Universe. Very creative. And for the first 5 years of being an entrepreneur, and it hasn't changed much since, but literally made every mistake in the book along the way. knew that it was a big market, like business owners needed capital, but the way we went about doing it was the business model was completely flawed. So long story short, after about 4 or 5 years of running that, we got it up to about 10 million in revenue. But it was all held together with duct tape and bubble gum, and it was so hard. And we started thinking, well, all these entrepreneurs need capital, but they don't need investor capital. They need most of them are Main Street businesses. They're restaurant owners and landscapers and dry cleaners. They need a loan. And so on nights and weekends, we started dreaming up the concept of Lendio. And in 2011, we went from 10 million in revenue to 0 overnight, which we tried to plan that to make it go smoothly. It was a complete disaster. One of the hardest things I've ever done in my career. But we had a lot of conviction that Lendio would be a better business model to help more businesses. And so we launched in 2011. This year is our 10-year anniversary. We crossed the $100 million in annual revenue mark already this year. Thank you. And that's the fun part. There's a lot of pain along the way that I can talk about. But we connect small business owners up to financial institutions. So think about it as like Expedia. You go to Expedia for hotels, or you go to Yelp to search for restaurants or things like that. We are a marketplace to allow you to comparison shop various loan options from hundreds of lenders across the United States.
So bubblegum and duct tape up to 10 million, and then from 10 million to 0 to Lendio, which is amazing. Talk to us about the struggles and challenges you faced outside of going from 10 million to 0 in revenue of Lendio. What were the hardest parts in the beginning, and what tools and tips do you have for entrepreneurs who are kind of in the same early stages of companies?
Well, so many lessons along the way. One of the very first lessons that I learned as an entrepreneur is that revenue covers a lot of mistakes that you make as an entrepreneur. Early on, even though I had 50,000, this is pre-Lendio, but it was a very valuable lesson I learned. Even though I had $50,000, you think $50,000 is like, oh, if I had $50,000, it's going to change everything, and in some ways it was a blessing. In other ways it was a curse, because you don't think you need revenue to actually sustain something. And so I felt like we got into this stage of what I call playing business. You're focused on a really nice website and fancy business cards, and do I have office space, and does my website look perfect, and is the product just right, and it's like, and you don't you don't focus on product market fit. You don't go out and talk to customers and say, do they need this, and will they pay for it, and can I generate revenue? It was about Friday before, it was the payroll before Christmas, and it was going to be on a Friday. About Tuesday, I realized that I had ran out of our $50,000, and that we weren't going to be able to make payroll. This is one of the probably 6 or 7 moments in my entrepreneurial career where I was literally in fetal position on the floor, thinking about these 8 people that were dependent on me for their Christmas, and I wasn't going to be able to make it. And so I went and talked to some advisors and begged them for money, and fortunately, the best thing they did is they did not give me money. They said it'll just perpetuate the problem. You need to figure out how do you create a sustainable business. And so they helped me as a mentor kind of create a plan to how do we get to revenue. And so I came back on Friday morning. I pulled the 8 people together, and I'm like, the bad news, I got bad news, I got good news. The bad news, I can't pay you today. And the good news, I have a plan. Which really wasn't good news at all for anyone. But I walked him through this plan, and I said, why don't you think about it over the weekend? I'll pay you through stock options, or through stock. And for 3 months, I'm hoping that you'll stick with me. And then after 3 months, I believe we'll get to a point where we can start making payroll again. But I get it. If you're not in, totally understand. Because I can't pay you. If you are, the sign you can show me is you'll be here on Monday morning, like ready to go. So I showed up Monday morning, stressed all weekend, didn't know if anyone was going to show up, and all 8 did show up, and they believed in this vision that we had for this company. And so, anyways, one of the most I have so many painful learning experiences. That was one of them, which is focus on revenue, product market fit. Those things, the rest of the stuff will come later.
In our previous conversation, we talked a lot about the capital raises and honestly the battles that you and your co-founders fought to raise capital. Can you tell us a little bit about that process, what kind of capital raises you went through, and the wins and losses that you experienced along the way?
Yeah, so I've probably had experience getting every single type of capital you can ever think of, whether that's leveraging personal credit cards, leveraging bank loans, getting there's venture debt that we've got. We've raised venture capital, angel capital, growth capital, private equity money. So along the way, I would probably say that this isn't a badge that I would be proud of, but I'm not sure if there's anyone in the state of Utah that has had more term sheets fallen through before funding than I have had. And usually when you get a term sheet from an investor or a venture capitalist and it's signed, the likelihood of that falling through is fairly low. And I've had probably 4 or 5 that have fallen through for all various reasons, and most of them, they were pretty upsetting. But a couple experiences. There's been some that have been pretty devastating in the moment, where those were probably another one of my 6 moments, fetal position on the floor, just like you're dependent on, you think you've got a term sheet signed, you're days away. Like I had a $25 million, no. It was a $30 million term sheet that we had signed, and we were days away from getting it closed. And I was down at Lake Powell, and for those of you that travel Lake Powell, it's off the grid, so you don't have access to email or text, and we were going to close like the day I got home. And so Lake Powell's my happy place. I'm enjoying it, like thinking I'm going to get home. We're going to close $30 million. And I get a text one day. I went out to the channel, and I got a text that come through. It was like, Brock, from this investor, I need to talk to you right away. And he knew that I was off the grid. And so I was on. I'll never forget this moment. I was on my boat in the middle of Lake Powell, and I didn't get very good reception unless I stood up on the back of my boat and was like, the higher I got on the boat, the better the reception. So I was like, stand up on like this and trying to talk like this so I could hear them, as he proceeded to tell me that they conducted a market research study from a group that doesn't have anything to do with Fintech. They use a group that does healthcare research to do a Fintech market research study. And the conclusion of the research study is when the economy turns, that lending will go away. And I'm like, there's no way. Look at the last 4 credit cycles when actually the economy drops, lending is in higher demand. And he's like, sorry, this is what the research says. And it was just like, I couldn't believe it. Anyways, by the way, when the market turns, we 4x'd our business because the demand for capital, and I just wanted to like the mean person inside of me just wanted to be the I told you so and just shove it in his face, but I didn't. But anyways, I have had stories. I've got another story I've told you but I don't
Share
know
it.
how
It's a
much
good
time we
one.
have.
We have time. We love stories. Share it.
Which one should I do? The Boston one or the Idaho one? Did I tell both
Oh,
those?
you did. You told me both of those. Boston was also Costa Rica, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Should
let's
I do
do
the
Boston and Costa Rica.
okay.
Yeah.
So I had one scenario where we had a term sheet signed from a group, and one of the main partners, investor partners at this venture fund, was living over in Europe. He was actually bound between England and Moscow, and one of the criteria to be able to get the round closed was that I needed to meet this other partner, and so I was like, okay, well, should I go over there? And he's like, no, he'll come here to the U.S. I'll figure it out sometime in the next few weeks. Well, we were taking a group of employees down to Costa Rica for a sales incentive trip, President's Club trip. And I was the host and had figured out all the itinerary. And so we were on the flight, and we were layover in Dallas and then going down to Costa Rica. And by the way, my wife at the time was about 7 months pregnant and was accompanying me. From Salt Lake City to Dallas, I get an email from the partner saying, Brock, this other partner is happens to be flying to Boston right now, and he wants to meet with you tonight, and at the Ritz-Carlton at Boston. Can you get there? And we needed the money, and but I had this dilemma because I'm hosting about 20 people on this trip, and but I'm like, I have to do it. So I start while I'm on the flight. I book a flight from Dallas to Boston, and then from Boston back to Dallas the next day, and then I was going to fly to Costa Rica a day later. So we get off the flight. I round up all the team, and I tell them, I'm really, really sorry. I can't tell you why, but I have to go to Boston tonight. And they're like, what? You're the host of this trip. And I said to my wife, I'm like, I'm sorry. You're going to have to like host these people that you don't know. And that wasn't so bad, except for the fact that all of the luggage was attached to me and my itinerary. So as soon as my itinerary went to Boston, so did all the luggage. So they land, and they're looking for the baggage, and it wasn't there. And my wife was not happy with that. She had to go to Walmart and buy some clothes for a couple days, and to buy toiletries and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, flew that night to Boston and met with this guy. And this guy has deep Russian accent, hardly speaks any English. And it was at the Ritz-Carlton. We met. The meeting was a 1 a.m. meeting, and it was music, and it was at this bar, and there was just like loud music, and it was dark, and I was tired, and the Russian accent I could hardly hear, and he just grilled me for like 2.5 hours. And then we were done about 3:30 a.m. And then he's like, I want to meet with you one more time tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Okay, here we go again. So wake up the next morning, go to breakfast, grilling. At least this time I didn't have the music, which was a little bit easier. Anyways, I ended up flying back to Dallas and down to Costa Rica and got the deal closed. But it's just a journey. Like raising money is man, it's hard. I'm sure. How many of you have gone through it or are going through the experience of raising money? It's hard. It doesn't get easier. And sometimes you kind of just have to go out of your way and figure out how to tell your story and get the right person and do what you can to get them on board. And it's made a big impact. So
and make some bold moves. You've made the Idaho story.
Moves.
You made a bold move in Costa Rica and Boston. You made a bold move and switched up some travel plans. But what advice do you have for our audience members who are currently or have experienced capital raises?
Yeah. So raising money is like you treat it as Well, first of all, I think it's really important that that you work really hard on what is the pitch and the story and the compelling, like, all the things, the market size and go to market plan and your business model, your competitive advantage and your team and how can you show traction, like all those things. Not because that you have to you're going to raise money off this amazing pitch deck, but you have to know your metrics inside and out. You have to know your go-to-market. You have to, like, they want to be able to, when you're pitching them, know that your business inside and out, and because they're going to have so much confidence in you as the entrepreneur. So, like, going through that rigorous process at the beginning and getting mentorship and advice. Someone like calling me. Going through and getting, like, that's really important stage, is to practice that over and over. Practice your pitch. Don't get feedback from people that are just going to tell you what you want to hear. Get feedback from people that have done it, that are going to, like, really push you and challenge you and say, this, maybe you're not thinking about this right, or is this the right data, or is this the right business model? Like, all that stuff is very, very important part of your fundraising process. Then from there, I think it is. Then I treat it like a sales process, right? So sales, you think it's all about the numbers and your pipeline. So you start with 100, and then, or whatever the number is, and then you reach out to 100, and you might get 50 that respond, and then those 50 you're trying to get first meetings, and you might get first meetings for 25, and then 25 of those might turn into second meetings, or 12 of those might turn into second meetings. And then 6 of those might get into due diligence, and 3 of them might get to a point where you're getting it to the point where you finally narrow it down, whether they opt out or you narrow it down to hopefully a few in the groups that want to do the deal. And then if you're fortunate, I had a friend of mine just yesterday call me. He's in a great spot. He's been trying to raise money for a long time, and he finally got it to a point where he's got 2 groups that are very interested. So they both gave term sheets, and then now he's got them pitted against each other. And right at the last minute, he was about to make a decision, and one of the investors came in with a higher valuation, and he called me in a panic. He's like, "Hey, Brock, this is literally 2 days ago. This is good news, but I just got this term sheet, and I don't know what to do. I can't decide between the 2 groups. What's your advice?" And my advice was, take the terms off. If the terms are good, like, terms are important, and you should read a book called Term Sheets and Valuations if you're wondering about terms. But take the terms off the table and really make your decision off who do you enjoy working with the most, because this is going to be a partner now, and who understands your vision the best. Because if you're always trying to teach that person, your investor, like, where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish, and you're always like, they don't quite understand it. I've been there, and it's like pulling teeth. It's so frustrating. But so I'm like, is there one of them that really understands your vision and is actually sometimes going to push you to think bigger? And if that's the case, that's the one you want to choose, because you'll benefit in the long run. So anyways, I've made so many mistakes along the way. It's where I've done it wrong, or the financial model wasn't good, or my pitch wasn't good, or I didn't go through that refining process or whatever. So those are a couple tips that hopefully might be helpful.
Thank you. Lendio is on a mission to save small businesses, right? And with our recent year that we had, there were a lot of layoffs and there was a lot of unemployment, but Lendio made about 500 hires. Is that right? Talk to me about that hiring process, what drove that decision, and also how did the pandemic affect Lendio? Because if you're making 500 hires, I'm assuming you may have had a little bit of a different experience than a lot of people.
Yeah, so last March, when the pandemic was starting to come to light, and and there was panic everywhere, right? None of us knew what COVID means or the impact, or it was just so many unknowns. And what's crazy is we had quarter over quarter. In fact, like, I think it was 5 months in a row hit our financial targets. Just growing very consistently month over month. And all of a sudden, in the middle of March, we went from every lender in America wanting as many loans as they could possibly get their hands on to every lender in America saying, I am not lending $1 anymore, because right now there's no way to assess risk, because you couldn't, or is that business going to be open next week, or are they going to be shut down from quarantine or other, it was just the world was in this free fall, right? And we started paying attention to what was happening in D.C. around this, the CARES Act, and the largest stimulus package that's ever been passed in the history of the U.S. And part of that was this Paycheck Protection Program. And I was following it, and I saw one interview by the Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, where he said, every business owner in America is going to be able to get access to a paycheck protection loan. And in that moment, I thought, well, if every business owner in America is going to get access, and we are the largest marketplace in the United States, I don't know how we're going to make money, and I don't know how all this is going to work. Everything is totally unknown, but this is our moment. And I sent a text to my board. It was a quote from Winston Churchill that basically says that every person in their life will have a moment where they'll be figuratively tapped on the shoulder and given an opportunity to do something for which they are uniquely qualified to perform. And I got that quote, and I sent it out to our board, and I said, I don't know what this is going to look like, but this is our moment. We're uniquely qualified to help small businesses. And our mission is fueling the American dream, and we kind of tweaked it at this moment to save the American dream. We have to help these small business owners get access to capital. So we proactively just said we're going to go for it, and we hired 250 people in 2 weeks, and everyone was work from home at the time. We switched from working in the office to work from home, training online. We don't even know what we're training on, and it was just like this crazy experience, and so they launched the Paycheck Protection Program, and it was a complete disaster. And I sent out a tweet that basically said as much, and my tweet just was like wildfire, just spread throughout all over Twitter, and within minutes, I started having CNN, CNBC, Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal. Literally had 25 press interviews back to back to back over the next 48 hours. And I was on every TV news thing about this Paycheck Protection Program, and what a disaster it was. And we had more signups. We had 50,000 business owners sign up in those 2 days than we'd had in the previous year combined. And we partner with business owners and lenders to be able to gather business loan applications, match them up to financial institutions, and help business owners get access to these much needed PPP loans. We ended up helping over 200,000 businesses secure about $10 billion of loans, which was amazing. It was the hardest thing. It was 10 times harder than anything I've ever done in my life. And another on the floor in fetal position. There were 2 moments during the last 18 months where I was on that, and those are stories in and of themselves, but 10 times more meaningful as well. Just the number of jobs that we saved, and the lives that we had an impact. We had thank you notes and video testimonials, and it was amazing experience.
From what I've known about you and gotten to know you recently, and the research that I've done on Lendio, it's clear that it's embedded into the culture to care and to be bold and to be gritty. And that's reflected in your work with small businesses. And I can hear that there's passion behind saving small businesses and improving the American dream and making that a reality for people. Can you talk to me about why it matters. Why do small businesses matter to Utah's economy and to the United States economy as a whole?
Well, small business is the backbone of the economy. I mean, and you think about and that's a nice kind of cliche phrase to say, and where you throw out the stats of 70% of employment comes from small business. But I like to make it really personal. Can you imagine Provo, where you go down Center Street or down University Parkway, and all of the restaurants and retail shops and gas stations are boarded up because we only buy from Amazon, which, by the way, I love Amazon. This isn't an anti-Amazon, but think about the impact it has on the community to have a vibrant community that employs people and creates that experience of going, walking down Main Street and going to a restaurant or shopping at your local favorite place or whatever that might be, and then the amount of innovation that comes from small business, and let alone the jobs and supporting families and paying for mortgages and car payments and college educations and all of that. So there's so much around the fabric of the American dream that we throw out the American dream, and it's like this another kind of cliche phrase. I was at dinner just a couple weeks ago, actually here in Provo, Communal, one of my favorite restaurants, which is one of those
delicious,
right? And he was immigrant from Mexico, and he came with $100, and and when he was about 18 years old, and during his lifetime, he ended up owning some convenience stores, sold those. He ended up buying a bank, and now and took over the bank in that local community, and he lives right on the border of Mexico, McAllen, Texas. This Texas National Bank, and now it's a $500 million bank. And the way he talks about, the American dream, that he didn't have those opportunities where he grew up, and his family who stayed in Mexico have not had those opportunities, and the impact he's having not only in his community in McAllen, Texas, but in his family in Mexico, and his passion for that American dream is it's just so real. It comes to life. So when you hear the stories of these business owners that we help, and I had one. It was a helicopter tour in Florida, in kind of the Destin area, and his helicopter broke down, and all of a sudden he can't make a living anymore because his helicopter broke down. He's got to go get a loan to be able to, and it was a expensive repair to fix his helicopter so he can actually go back to work. And it came to life when I took, when my family, we were down in Destin, and I didn't go on his tour, but I saw these helicopter tours, and I'm thinking, I know we helped. That might be the guy we helped with the $75,000 loan, and he sent us. He created this video and sent us this thank you note, and it's like those stories make it very real that you are having an impact, and that's the best part about my job.
Lendio is in a really unique position to help these small businesses. Is there anything built into your company structure that specifically focuses on helping individuals from diverse or less privileged backgrounds to have access to these loans and to kind of take their first step towards this American dream?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. This is another area where we're passionate, and I'll just give a kind of, hopefully proof is in the pudding. When PPP happened, when the first report of PPP loans came out, they had said that the average loan size for this Paycheck Protection loan was about $400,000. $400,000. That's 2.5 times your monthly payroll. That means the average monthly payroll of these businesses was what, $150,000 a month, and that's not like a small business. That's not like a Main Street business. It's not huge, but it's most businesses are, the average loan size for us is like $35,000 or $40,000. And what we found out was that the reason why it was so large is because banks were prioritizing their customers and their largest customers. And many individuals, especially the underserved, smallest of small businesses, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, were actually kind of at a significant disadvantage because they couldn't go to their bank and get a loan. And when that report came out as an organization, we do a weekly town hall. We said, that's who we're supporting. We're going after the underserved. And we ended up, I actually had some statistics around this. We ended up helping 30. So the national average for women-owned businesses that got a loan was around 18% of the businesses. 37% of the businesses that Lendio helped were women-owned businesses that got a loan. Black-owned businesses, it was around 14% of businesses that had got a PPP loan were black-owned, and 25% of Lendio's businesses. So we significantly outpaced kind of the par or the average, right? With this passion to help those underserved or the smallest of small businesses. And our average loan size ended up being around $20,000. $20,000 versus $400,000 was a big difference. So we partner also with MasterCard on this. It's called Inclusion for I can't remember exactly. Inclusion for Capital Access, which is focused on that segment of the market. So it's an area I'm pretty passionate about.
Brilliant. Love it. We're going to take a quick intermission for whoever parked the red Volkswagen to move it now, please. It has blocked in the FedEx driver. So we appreciate that you are here. Oh. That actually would have been so funny if that was you.
Just kidding.
We won't watch and stare at whoever it is, but thank you for being here, but please move your car. Okay. Excellent. Okay, Brock. So we've heard so many stories. We've heard so many wins and losses and challenges and successes. What advice do you have for company leaders who are building growing companies? There's a lot of growing pains that come with culture and team and capital raises, as we've heard. What advice do you have for them as leaders?
I think first off, man, there's so many thoughts around that. I think that, like, understand your why. Why are you wanting to, like, being an entrepreneur is so hard. And half the battle is just like fighting to get out of fetal position, get up and fight to live another day. And literally I think part of our success isn't because we're amazing entrepreneurs or we've done something completely different from others. I mean, there's a lot of luck and just persistence. That some days, like, I got to figure out how to get to tomorrow, and then I got to figure out how to get to the next day, but you're only going to have that motivation if it is truly something that you like, your why. Like that there is that, like, I am so passionate about this for reason X, and it can't be. Early on for me, I thought, oh, it's because I'm going to drive off into the sunset in a Lamborghini in 3 years, and everything's going to be hunky dory. That's not it. That's not the motivation. There needs to be, and I don't know, that's going to get you somewhere. I'm not going to say it's like not any part of your motivation, right, is to build something valuable. But if there's something there that is your driver, your motivation, and really understanding that, I think is really critical. And then if it's mission driven, the power of getting a group of individuals that combine to unite to do something bigger than themselves is like, never underestimate that. My team is like, they are so passionate about helping small businesses that they're willing to run through brick walls and other things to be able to make that happen. So understanding your why, your motivation behind it. I talked about product market fit, focusing on revenue. Those are a few things.
Perfect. What are some principles of business that you use to guide your career?
For me, we established values at our business, at our company early on. Like, what are the guiding principles that determine the way we operate as the type of culture that we want to have? And those have been those values really are important to help you define, like, this is who we are, this is who we aren't, this is who we hire to and fire to, and so having those values to me have been. When you can define that and you believe it and you live to it, then what it does is it actually helps you recruit good talent, because people that you may not be able to afford early on will jump in if they believe in your mission and they also agree with your values. Now there's other non-compensatory reasons for them to say, I want to be a part of that, because their mission is so inspiring, and their values, like, this is who I am. Like, what they say, that's what I resonate with. And so that was a big part of kind of, like, we've been named, top 50 cultures in America by Glassdoor a couple years in a row, and you read our Glassdoor reviews, they talk about those values, and so it helps to attract, and what that leads to is you have to get talent. You have to surround yourself with people that are literally smarter than you, and then in certain areas, and so getting that team is also critical. So.
We are going to open it up for audience questions. But before we do, if there's any last drops of wisdom you would like to share, you're more than welcome to.
Well, I'll just mention one last thing, which is I'm super passionate. I had a story one time. I had an investor we had a term sheet from, and we were out to lunch, and he said, "Tell me about you and your family, or whatever, or tell me about you." And I went on to tell him, at the time we only had 2 kids, my son Jackson and my daughter Ellie. And I went on to tell him that, about my wife Kim and my kids, and how much I love spending time with them. And he asked me a question that was really, really changed my life and my career. He said, when the time gets tough, which one are you going to choose? And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, I've been an investor for a really long time. I've seen a lot of CEOs. And I've never seen, I don't know, and I don't, a CEO that's an amazing husband and father and amazing CEO. So they either choose to be a great husband and father, or they choose to be a great CEO. So when it gets tough for you, which one are you going to choose? And I sat there and I said, I would choose my family, but I'm not going to choose. And he's like, and the question, like, just this sat with me. So, like, I hated that question. I couldn't, I was wrestling with it. And I decided at that moment, that was one of the moments where I was the one who canceled the term sheet. I said, I just don't think it's the right fit, because I just fundamentally don't believe that. And in that moment, I kind of set this life goal that it was going to be an aspiration of mine to be an amazing husband and father and an amazing CEO, and kind of prove that guy wrong. And I don't, and I'm neither an amazing CEO or amazing husband and father, but it is an aspiration of mine. There are a couple things that I've learned, though, which is, and I'm reading this amazing book right now by Scott O'Neill, where it says, "Be where your feet are," and that's probably the same advice. Is like there are things you have to sacrifice if you're gonna want to try and be an amazing CEO and or entrepreneur and amazing husband, father, mother, spouse, whatever the role is. There are a lot of sacrifices that you have to give up. But if you are where your feet are, I think that makes all the difference. Meaning that I try and be to my kids' games and or their dance recitals. I make time for Friday night date night. When I'm at the office, man, I am like I have no distractions. It's like I am all in. You're just so effective. And I've created this schedule in my life around like what I do in the morning and wake up and I study and have some meditation time and I work out and time for I make it home for dinner, and I have to work sometimes at night or late night or other things like that. But it's like there's no balance because there's no such thing as life balance. But there is such thing as like be where your feet are. Try and be in the moment with my wife and kid. And I suck at it. I'm not good at it. I'm trying really hard, but it's something I'm extremely passionate about, and I believe hopefully someday I'll be able to have an impact as a husband and father and build a business that is much bigger than me, that's endures much past what I've been able to accomplish up until now. So anyways.
I think that's beautiful, yeah. And we're glad that your feet are here with us today.
And I know you're going to get to another question. Sorry for the interjection. If you have a silver Nissan Altima, I've never had this happen before. With license plate U2876X, the FedEx driver accidentally hit your car while trying to get out. And he's waiting out here to talk to whoever you are. So I'm really sorry about that.
We will clap for you, too, because you deserve that.
Yeah.
Be safe on the roads home, everyone. This parking lot is tragic today, but the time is now yours. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Our mic runners will run a microphone to you, and we will get your question answered.
So as you previously mentioned before, like one of the greatest parts of working in a team and the greatest challenge is also being able to effectively communicate with your coworkers. And I'd like to know, especially as a CEO, I'm sure a great challenge of yours is seeing other people bring ideas to the table, because it is literally your child. You grew it, like you saw it grow up, you raised it. So what is what do you suggest to help you, stay in the feet of your, put yourself in the shoes of your coworkers and help open up to bring those ideas to the table?
Yeah, great question. So one of the ways that I one of our values at Lendio is be the CEO of your job. And for that to happen, there's a few precursors for that to occur. Number one, you have to be able to hire someone that is so passionate about that role that that makes them good at it. They're thinking about it on nights and weekends, and they're on their drive, and they're just, because it's not really a job. They love it. It's like it's a joy. If you can hire someone that is so passionate about their job, then as a leader, now you have the responsibility to make sure that person knows how they fit within the vision of the company, give them the resources, and then get out of the way. You can't micromanage. You have to have full trust. They may do it differently than you, but that's what you hire them for that. And so, I think that's one of the things that we've learned is, and then I can go now focus on solving something else, because it's like they've got it, and I'm gonna trust them, and I'm gonna, you verify, but I've found that the organization grows and progresses much more quickly when you're able to empower your team members in that way.
So you were talking about fundraising, and I was just wondering if there's anything, whether it be singing in your car or something really nerdy, that you would do before meeting with an investor, just to pump yourself up and get yourself in that power zone.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I do think so much of your the way you present yourself is really, really critical, and so it depends. Sometimes it is just like blasting music in the car. Sometimes it's really studying the pitch and the numbers and how I want to tell the story. Sometimes for me, it's go into a stall and say a prayer. So it just it depends. One time I showed up in an investors where they were at their investment committee meeting, and they were talking about Lendio, and it was up in Idaho, and I'm like, they need to say yes to us in that meeting. So I decided to get on a plane and fly up, and unannounced showed up in their investment committee meeting. Just like a really bold move to say, like, I want to answer any questions, and I want you to know we're going to make this thing happen. And but getting out of your comfort zone and being bold, I think, is really, really critical. Without being, you have to also be humble and receptive. Like sometimes, there's this saying, if you ask for money, you'll get advice, and if you ask for advice, you'll get money. So sometimes it's just from an investor and like get them to ask them a lot of questions, have them understand your business, have them get excited about your business, and then it leads to money later.
Hi, my name is Eric Chimpe. So I'm a little different from people here. I'm from the Congo. I don't know if anybody's from Africa here.
Yes, yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. So I have a little bit of different experience compared to different business owners here. I have started a small business, but as you were talking about the market fit, I look into different opportunity, and I see that there is a lot of business opportunity outside of the United States, like in Africa. Yeah. And as an entrepreneur, I'm getting to the point where I'm having so much hard time to meet right investor that really do understand the market that I'm going into. Yes, of course, you were saying here, like, sometimes you will meet some great investor, but they need to understand your market that you're going to. But as an entrepreneur, you get to the point like, I really know this market really well. I've been in there. I lived my whole life there. I moved to the state, but I understand. I know that this will be very, very good market for the business that I'm going into. So how would you make an investor to understand that your business ideas, even if it's in the market that they don't understand, will be a great fit or a great investment for them?
Oh man, that I feel for you. I've been I don't have your exact same story, obviously, but I've been in I've had those feelings of like, I pitched all of these people and they don't understand, I think there's some of the painful lessons that I've learned in that is sometimes I had to look inward and say, am I not articulating the story very well? And I'm not saying that's you, but for me, that was part of it. Like I wasn't telling the right story, and it's critical to just go through that refinement process. And how do I tell that story? And how do I convey this? And how do I present it? It would even be more challenging for you because it's hard for an investor to relate to it, right? Because it's in back in your hometown, right? Man, I the only kind of advice that I would say is make sure that you refine the story, and then don't give up. There's like sometimes you have to go through a lot of potential investors to finally get someone that says, I see it, I believe it, I've experienced this. And sometimes half that battle, by the way, is when you're pitching someone, and even if it's not a good fit for them, I like to be able to ask them, hey, if it's not a good fit for you, is there any connections you have, or do you know anyone that you think would be a good fit for this, or do you know anyone that understands this market? And so like trying to really network, asking, what is the type of person that would understand this, and how do I get to that person? So leverage your connections. Always just keep asking people to open up other doors until you find someone that really understands and appreciates what you're trying to accomplish.
We have time for about one more question. Perfect.
So as a as a business leader, you have to deal with the kind of day-to-day stuff, but trying to be more kind of inspirational, aspirational. What are some motivating things for you? What do you do to kind of take yourself out of your current situation, think about the future, think more strategically? Is it books? You mentioned the Scott O'Neill book. You know, is it talking to advisors? Is it, you know, what is it do you do?
Yeah, great question. So for me, I'm always learning about, like, I see something interesting on Twitter or an article or whatever, and then I always dive into what made that company successful. What was their strategy? What was their model? What was their unique differentiator? And so keeping and on a very regular basis, like, it's just part of kind of, I love learning what other people did, whether it was leadership techniques or culture, or, you know, I'll go on LinkedIn, and like the other day, I was on LinkedIn, and I saw one of the questions we have right now is, like, how do you increase retention, right? So that's a question in my head. And, you know, I'm going through LinkedIn, just looking at, you know, updates or whatever, and I see a friend of mine posts, you know, this announcement that they're going to a 4-day work week. Instead of just looking at that article and saying, "Oh, that's interesting," I go and I look at it and I study it, and I look at some of the comments, and then I start analyzing in my head, like, is that a possibility? What would that look like? How would that work? And you know, I naturally do that. And I'll go see someone raised. One time we've got this cash flow business, and I saw a company raise $100 million, and I saw the headline. I went and studied the article. What can I learn in that article about, you know, how did they raise $100 million? I go learn about the product. I understand their team, and so that kind of gives you this education to be able to now think through applications or strategy to your own business. Let me give one other example. I learned about this small SBA loan product about 12 or 15 years ago, and this lender that was doing something very different than everyone else, and then that the lender was purchased by someone else, and then they discontinued that product. Well, I always kind of put the placeholder in the back of my head, like, that is a really interesting product. I don't know why anyone's not doing. I'm wondering why no one's doing it. So for like 10 years, I've been studying this product, like, just kind of off and on, and all of a sudden, in the last like 3 months, there's all these pieces have come together for us to launch this small SBA product that's going to be super differentiated and very unique, and it's like 12 years in the making, you know, just from. And so for me, you know, part of my kind of downtime, you know, is I just like to learn and study and you know, and then figure out, is there application? Sometimes there is, and other times there's not.
For the last and final question, we always like to ask, what is something fun that your success has allowed you to do?
I think one of the coolest things that as I was thinking about this question, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, right? And we usually do a summer. We have an office in New York, and we have an office here, and then we've got remote team members across the country. And because of COVID, you know, we haven't done any company parties, or we do an annual, you know, award ceremony or whatnot. And we had this concept, like, to celebrate 10 years and coming out of the pandemic, could we get every team member in Utah for like a 3-day celebration? And just kind of threw it out there, and we decided, we pulled it off. And to have we had like 500 and about 500 employees. A bunch of them flew in from across the country. We put them up in hotels. We rented out. How many of you been to the Sundance concert, Bluebird concert series? That's the outdoor amphitheater. We rented out a bunch of seats there. We had dinner up there, and it was just this taking a step back and saying all of these team members, their families, and the impact we're having, and just seeing all in this amazing, summer night outdoor concert and 2 days of just fun of people coming together and hugs, and it was just awesome. I mean, and to be a part of that and see kind of 10 years of work coming together like that was also a moment that I'll never forget, and one that being an entrepreneur has provided. So.
Incredible. Well, Brock, thank you so much for being with us. We do have a gift for you here.
Well, thank you so much.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
One more time for Brock Blake, everybody.
Thank you.